When I signed the lease on Stack 12, I figured it'd be rough, but manageable. Cheap units, good enough bandwidth, and if you don't mind the constant hum of the recycling processors, it's not the worst place in the city. Jonas moved in the same day I did. Big guy, always smelling like burnt grease. Friendly enough at first. Told me he worked maintenance at a downtown chop shop, fixing up busted limb augments and rewiring synth nerves. I remember his first upgrade. Cheap optic mods glowing bright red like neon signage. He flashed them at me in the elevator, grinning like he'd won the lottery. "They got thermal too," he bragged. "And zoom, can practically see your pores." At the time, I thought it was harmless. People get upgrades all the time. But Jonas didn't stop. Next came dermal plating. Carbon tendon replacements, cooling mesh under the skin. Week after week, he came back with something new. One night, I saw him hauling a heavy crate up the stairwell alone. Cables poking through the wood like it was alive. "Supply run?" I joked. He just laughed. But it wasn't a normal laugh. It had a wet, metallic rasp beneath it. "Special delivery," he said, thumping the side of the crate. From inside, I heard something thump back. After that, things got worse. I started hearing him at night, grinding, welding, something like bones snapping under pressure. Once, I swear I heard a scream, tinny and mechanical, like it was coming from inside a radio left on too long. Then came the smell, burnt meat and ozone, synthetic flesh decaying in the humid, recirculated air. I should have called building management, but they wouldn't care. No complaints unless fluids dripping through the ceiling. Voluntary modifications, they'd probably say. Not even opening the ticket. Guy's paying for his parts, nothing illegal about self-upgrades. But it wasn't voluntary anymore. I saw him in the hallway, or what was left of him. His jaw was gone, replaced by a welded cluster of speaker grills. Wires looped out from his neck into a mass of exposed spine components, twitching and sparking. His left arm had been stripped down to bare metal tendons and pistons, stained dark with something wet. "Good morning," Jonas buzzed through the speakers. His half-mouth twisted into a grin. At least, it tried to. "You should upgrade, neighbor. This flesh prison is obsolete." The next part is where things snapped. He started talking less, moving less. His mods grew hungry. I don't know how else to put it. They hummed even when he stood still, cycling power like they had minds of their own. He was charging himself off of illegal battery packs, cords snaked into outlets like some parasitic machine leeching the tower dry. Then he stopped leaving his apartment altogether. No food deliveries, no maintenance calls, no screams, just silence. And then I heard the first crash, loud enough to shake my walls. I pressed my ear to the wall and heard him shouting. A garbled, static-drenched scream. "Stop! Stop! I made you!" His words cut off with a sickening wet snap. Curiosity got the better of me. Later that night, I crept into the hall. His door hung open, the auto lock slagged and fused. The smell hit me first. Scorched plastic, hydraulic fluid, and something unmistakably human. Inside his apartment was wrecked. Gutted power cells and shattered servos littered the floor like bones in a predator's den. His mods were gone, torn from his body and scattered across the room. And there, in that far corner, slumped Jonas, what was left of him. He was still alive. Barely. Just a twitching torso and head, glistening cables dangling from where his limbs had been. His eyes, or the red sensors that replace them, flicked to me. "You see now?" he croaked through the half-dead speaker embedded in his throat. "The upgrade. It keeps upgrading." One of his severed prosthetic arms skittered across the floor behind him like an insect, dragging itself toward an open vent. Pieces of him, living scrap, rebelling against its creator. Jonas let out a ragged, static-laced laugh, his voice glitching and stuttering. They don't need us anymore. He shuddered, sparks spitting from the mess of cables at his spine. They're making something new. And then his red eyes dimmed to black. Dead. Or maybe not dead. Just emptied. I backed away, heart hammering in my chest. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw parts of his stolen implants slither into the ventilation shafts, vanishing into the bowels of the building. I called the police and they blocked off the apartment. That was 3 days ago. Since then, I've heard noises in the walls. Scraping metal, whirring servos, faint mechanical laughter, echoing from the vents that should be silent. Last night, when I woke up, I found something on my nightstand. Jonas's old optic implant, still glowing red, still watching me. When I inherited the old place from my uncle, I thought about selling it, but something about that felt wrong. The house had been in my family for generations, and part of me thought maybe, just maybe, a change of scenery would do me good. So I packed up what little I had and moved out to the country. What I got was Mrs. Garvey. She lived in the farmhouse next to mine, a stretch of fields between us. On my first day, she greeted me at the fence with a sun-bleached smile and a fresh pie in hand. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said. "You look like you could use a meal." It felt harmless enough. I thanked her, took the pie inside, and had a slice that evening. It was decent. Peach, I think. Though there was a strange, metallic aftertaste, I chalked it up to old cookware. The next morning, there was a knock at my door. Mrs. Garvey, beaming again, held out a second pie. "Don't want you going hungry, dear," she said. It became a routine. Every day a new pie, sometimes twice. Blueberry, rhubarb, apple, peach again. Always from scratch, always handed over with that same unnerving warmth. I started running out of space in my fridge. Out of politeness, I kept accepting them, but after a while I just couldn't keep up. I began sneaking them into the trash when she wasn't looking, but I should have been more careful. Yesterday morning she came by as usual, carrying a cherry pie with the crust folded into neat little hearts. As she passed it to me, her eyes drifted towards the garbage bin beside my porch. Her smile faltered. "What's that?" she asked softly. I froze. My stomach knotted. She stepped past me without waiting for an answer, flipped open the bin, and stared down at the discarded pie from the day before. Crust crumbling, the filling oozed out like congealed blood. Her face twisted, not in anger, not sadness, confusion, as if she couldn't comprehend why anyone would throw it away. "Oh dear," she said, almost to herself. She reached in with her bare hands, lifted the ruined pie from the trash, cradling it like it was a wounded animal. Then she looked at me. "You weren't supposed to waste him." "Him?" Before I could respond, she shook her head, mumbling, No. That won't do. That won't do at all." She turned on her heel and walked briskly back to her house, clutching the soiled pie against her chest. I didn't sleep that night. This morning, something even worse happened. I was making a sandwich, trying to force normalcy, when my knife caught on something hard in the peanut butter jar. I frowned, thinking it was just an unground peanut, but when I fished it out, my breath hitched in my throat. It wasn't a peanut, it was a fingernail. A grimy, yellowed fingernail, rimmed with black beneath the curve like it had been pried off and dropped in. The jar was half empty. I'd been eating from it all week. My skin crawled. I scoured the kitchen for any other signs of tampering, and that's when I noticed the mud tracks, small faint smears on the floor near the back door, scratches on the windowsill, like someone had forced it open. She had been in my house. She was still coming into my house. I packed my bags, threw everything I could in the truck, The engine coughed and stuttered, but miraculously turned over. I ran back inside to grab my pills from the bathroom. I heard the front door open. She stormed into my living room, holding a fresh pie in one hand and a shotgun in the other. Her eyes were wild, shining with tears. "Why are you leaving me?" she shrieked. I slipped out the back door and ran for my life to my truck. I slammed the gas and my truck flew down the driveway, my heart jackhammering in my chest. In the rearview mirror, I saw her stumble off the porch, trembling, pie still in her hand. She dropped it. It splattered in the middle of the driveway. Then she raised the shotgun to the back of my truck. I ducked down and swerved. When I looked back, she was putting the shotgun to her chin. As I watched, she lowered it and fell to the ground, weeping. I sped down the dirt road, kicking up clouds of dust. I passed the neighboring houses. They were all outside, standing in their yards, watching me, smiling, and waving goodbye. I've carried this story for a long time, and I think it's time to get it off my chest. Maybe someone out there has been through something similar. Maybe it'll help me sleep a little better at night. When my kids were younger, we owned a little cabin on a small lake in central Minnesota. We worked hard for it, and it was our escape from the grind. I'd bring my wife, my son, he was 13 at the time, and my daughter, she was 9. Fishing, fires at night, swimming in the lake, it was a peaceful life. For a while. Our neighbor across the way, Albert, was what you'd expect for this neck of the woods. Avid hunter, fisherman, smoked like a chimney, always had a Marlboro Red dangling from his lips. He wore these bug-eyed sunglasses constantly, looked like a husky Dale Gribble from King of the Hill. I don't think I ever saw his eyes. He lived next to the public water access. His house sat below the road, and he had a detached garage across the street. Behind the house, our property, was a mirror of his setup. Cabin on the lake, garage in the back field across the road. When we first moved in, Albert was decent, shared fishing tips, plowed my driveway the first winter. His wife, Carla, was just as friendly. But then she got sick. I think it might have been cancer. It took her fast. And after she passed, Albert changed. Not slowly, either. You could feel it immediately. It started with petty stuff. He'd drag his garbage cans and dump them right into our driveway. Not beside it, on it. Every time I moved them back, they'd end up there again like clockwork. We felt so bad for him, but I couldn't just let him keep putting his trash cans on my driveway. I went over to talk to him about it, and all he said was, "Stop parking on my fucking property." Eventually, I got tired of it. We paid for a professional survey to mark the property lines. I made plans to cut out the driveway and put up a fence and plant shrubs to close it off. We went out there on a random Saturday with a jackhammer and a grinder. That's when Albert really lost it. He came storming out with a handheld camera, recording us like he was building a case, shouting that our entire driveway was on his property. We had the survey markers right there in plain sight. He didn't care, called them fake, said he'd take it to court. I just ignored him and continued to cut out the concrete. Eventually, he went back inside. At the same time, there was this other thing going on. Out there on the lake, the locals let all their dogs roam free, through everyone's yards, beaches, whatever. Every day I'd find piles of dog crap in our yard, and all over our beach. We had a dog ourselves, but we always kept her supervised on a leash. I asked the neighbors politely at first to keep their dogs tied up, or at least clean up after them. They refused. One of them, this weird guy with a Scottish Terrier, white curly neck-length hair, and a full-on male pattern baldness, kinda looked like Jimmy Buffett, would deliberately ride his bike past our place, tell his dog to crap in our yard. I'd yell at him to pick it up, and he'd just stare at me like a mannequin. After a while, I started grabbing a shovel and tossing the piles back into his yard. Not proud of it, but I wasn't about to let my kids play in a minefield. I even asked the sheriff what my legal options were. He just shrugged and said, "Get a nice pellet gun, wink wink." For the record, I never shot a dog. Not one time. I swear to that. but I did see Albert, clear as day. You know what, a dog that was crapping on his beach. I told him what the sheriff had said, and somehow I think that twisted its way into town gossip. Next thing I know, Albert's going around saying I'm the one who shot the dog. Soon the rumors exploded. He started telling everyone I killed his dog. I swear, there wasn't a shred of truth to any of it, but people out there are protective of their pets. One day, this guy from down the road, I'll call him Larry, pulled up on the road between our cabin and garage. He wasn't drunk, but something was definitely off about him. Wild eyes, jittery energy. He starts by asking, all fake and friendly, "Do you know the homeowner?" I said, yeah. Then he says, "Oh, well, do you know they kill dogs?" I kept my cool and replied, okay, no they don't. And he snapped back, dead serious, "Yes they do." I said firmly, "No they don't. We're the homeowners." That's when he lost it. He started freaking out, yelling, "You're not gonna do that to my dog. If you touch my dog, I'll kill your fucking kid." My son was right there, hearing every word. My blood ran cold. I called the sheriff immediately. To their credit, they actually responded fast this time. The deputy went over to Larry's place and later told me he had to pull a taser on the guy because he was so worked up. They ended up charging him with making criminal threats. It felt like a small win, but honestly, it didn't last. Albert wasn't finished with us. He started parking himself in the middle of the road on his riding mower. Not mowing, just sitting there with the engine running, wearing his bug-eyed sunglasses and ear cans, cigarette burning, staring dead at me for hours, motionless, never blinked, never moved, besides to ash and light his cigs. At night it got worse. He had this old truck with a busted alarm system. Between 2 and 6 a.m., like clockwork, he'd set it off, blasting the horn, flashing the lights. Sometimes, just to make sure we were awake, he'd fire his guns into the field. We called the sheriff over and over. They always brushed it off as neighbor disputes, said it was out of their hands. The final straw, the gas can. One night, just before we packed it in for good, I caught Albert standing out at the edge of our property. No mower, no truck, just him, holding a red plastic gas can. When I hit him with the flashlight, he didn't flinch. He just smiled, this hollow, dead-eyed grin, and raised the gas can like a toast. Then he turned and walked back to his garage. That was it. We sold the cabin not long after, left and never looked back. To this day, I still wonder how far he would have gone if we hadn't left when we did. My son and I talk about it sometimes, even now, decades later. It still sends chills down my spine.